Welcome to Control Flow lecture. So control flow consists of three statements, which are if, else, and elif. And what they do is add logic to our code. The if statement performs a task if the condition is true. The else statement performs a default task when the if statement's condition is false. Else statements cannot exist on their own. The elif statement, short for else if, works in between if and else statements. And elif only performs a task when true and the if statement is false. And this all depends upon what's called indentation, which is something very unique to Python. And I'll elaborate upon that in a moment. But for now, just going to scroll down. And we have here a total of 4 variables, A, B, C, and D, 3 of which, as you can see, are integers. And the last one is a tuple that contains strings, in this case, cat, dog, and bird. So they're within a tuple. And we're going to do our first control flow. So if A is equal to 10 and B is less than 40, colon, and if I hit enter, notice it will go onto the second line with an indentation here. So there's a space here. It won't go here. If I hit the tab, we'll go back to there where it originally was at the beginning. And then we do print this is true, and we have the output of this is true, and that's because the if statement evaluates the true because A is equal to 10 and B is less than 40 is 25. And let's say, for instance, I were to move this here. What do you think is going to happen if I run this code? Well, if I run it, we get what's called an indentation error expected in an indented block, and the indented block is what this is here. So every time you see a colon here and you hit enter on the next line, it's automatically going to put the cursor in this indentation as opposed to being here at the beginning. So that's how Python works. That's a way of making it very elegant compared to other programming languages. Okay, so let's say, for instance, this was false instead of true. So the if statement evaluated to false. So let's say, for instance, we had 100 here. And we run this, we don't get any output because this is false, and therefore we don't have the print statements. And let's say, for instance, we could, instead of having an and, we could do an or. So the A obviously is not equal to 100, but B is less than 40. So what do you think is going to happen? Well, if we run this, we get true because at least one of them has to be true for this print statement to be output. Okay. And what we can also do, just go back to having it as an and let's put this as 10. We can do 2 if statements. So we do if A is equal to 10, colon, and then you have the indentation here automatically when you hit the enter. Then what we have here is a nested if statement. So B is less than 40, colon, print this is true, output. And there you go, you have the exact same output. So we have a nested if statement, and in both cases it produces the same output. Because we're using the same exact logic, it's just arranged in a slightly different manner. Okay, so let's just delete that. And what we're going to do now is something a little bit more interesting. So say, for instance, we can do an else. We'll do print this is false. And we still have this is true as the output because the if statement evaluates to false. The if statement evaluates to true, excuse me. But say if I were to change this to 100, now it says this is false because the if statement evaluates to false, so the default argument is printed out. Okay, so moving on from that, what we can do is something a little bit more interesting. I'm just going to comment that out to get rid of the error there. Then uncomment it. And we have if A is equal to 10, print A is true. And then we'll do a nested if. So we'll do B less than 40, print B is true, else, make a space here actually, else print B is false. And then we'll do an if for A, or rather an else, sorry, else print A is false, exclamation mark. So we run this, we should get two trues, so A is true and B is true, and we do. So what's happening here is that because A evaluates the true and B evaluates the true, you have both of these print statements. But let's say, for instance, we put this to 4, because we know B is 25, and 25 is obviously not less than 4, so if we run this, we get B is false. And if we were to change this for the first line and put this to 100, well, we know that this is going to be false, and this line here is false, so we're going to have, what do you think? Do you think we're going to have two false statements, or only one? Well, we only get one. And that might be a bit of a surprise to some people here, but what's happening is that Python is reading from top to bottom, so from the first line to the 10th line, and if it finds that there is a false statement, then it will default to the else statement and print that out, and it will completely ignore the nested if statements and the else statements. So in order for B to be checked, A has to be true, otherwise you only have the else statements. Okay, and we could reinforce this point by doing another nested if. Let's say we do C, and C is less than, let's say it's greater than 10, let's do 9, colon, print C is true, else print C is false. If we run this, of course we still have A is false because it's ignoring all the other code. So we put this to true, and what's going to happen, do you think, is that what's going to happen is we're only going to have the output of B is false along with A is true. Okay, so what's happening is that, like before with A, since B is false, it's going to ignore C, and therefore you're only going to have the output of B is false. But if we were to make this true, so instead B is less than 40, which is true, then you have A is true, B is true, and then it will evaluate C, and C will also be true. So we have three true outputs, A, B, and C. If we were to put this to 900, because we know C is equal to 100, then this is going to be false. So we have C is false. Okay. And we could do one more just to reinforce the point again. Another nested if. So D, let's say if, let's do cat in D, colon, print D is true, else print D is false. And if we run this, we don't have the output of D because C is false, but if we make C true, then we also have D is true. And let's say we change this to, well, we've got bird, so we'll also have true as well. But if we change it to, say, I don't know, zebra, then we have D is false. Okay, so moving on from that, what we're going to do is we're going to do a input. So if I do num equals input, enter a number, and this is a Python built-in method called input. So if I do type input, it'll tell you it's a method, and let's just put a colon there as well. Okay, and then if I do num, let's say I put 90 in, you notice that we have what's a string. It's not actually an integer, but it's a string of an integer. And if I were to do type num, as you can see, it's a string. And if we want to convert this into an actual integer or a float, then we do eval, Okay, and if I run this again, I put, let's say 100, we get 100, the integer. If I just check that with type, we get ints. And we could also do the same thing here for floats. So 9.123, and we check again, and we have a float. Okay, so we're going to be using this for another control flow. So let's just delete that, and we do if num is greater than or equal to 3, colon, print, keep looking. What we're going to be referring to is D, which is the tuple. So this would be the 0 index, first index, and second index. So if it's equal or greater than 3, then obviously we're not going to be able to find any of the elements, which are these strings, in this tuple. So that's why we say keep looking. And then if we do lf, let's make a bit of space here actually, lf d num, so we're selecting the index here, equal to cat, colon, print, found a curly brackets dot format, if you remember, d num. Then we'll do another lf d num equal to dog, colon, print, found a dot format. This is exactly the same code as above. Okay, so we don't actually need the else statement in here for the code to operate, but I'll show you what it looks like without the else before we go and put the else into this code. So we put 0, we're going to get found a cat, we do 1, we get dog, but what happens if I put in, let's say, 2? There's nothing because we haven't selected bird. Now we could do the same thing again, another elif statement like this for bird, but that would be quite wasteful because it's a lot more code to write and it's very repetitious. And we want to keep our code dry, which stands for don't repeat yourself. Okay, so say if I were to put in 4, it says keep looking. So if it's equal or greater than, so if it's greater than or equal to 3, then I'll say keep looking. But with 2, it doesn't work. So we do 2, we don't get anything at all. So that's when the else statement comes in. So we'll do print found a bird. Let's do 2, and now we have found a bird. Because this is going to be 0 for the cats, 1 for the dog, and if we go 3 or above, it's going to be keep looking. So logically, we're only left with the number 2. That's why we can just do else instead of writing this elif here. Okay, and we can have as many elifs as we like in between the if and the else. So moving on from that, what I'm going to do now, just scroll down here, is create a nested list of numbers. We'll do it as total, so the variable called total, and we'll put it in square brackets. We'll do list range 11. We'll do list range 10 to 21, and then lastly list range 20 to 31. And then we'll do total. And as you can see here, we have 3 nested lists of 10 integers within each of them. So 0 to 10, 10 to 20, and 20 to 30. Okay. And what I should probably do is change that to there's a slight problem there. The slight problem I'll mention in a moment, but we'll just leave it as that for now. Okay. So what we'll do is some control flow with this total list. And just to show you, of course, if we were to do indexing of, say, 0, we get the 0 to 10. We were to do, say, 1, we get 10 to 20. And, of course, we do 2, we get 20 to 30. And ideally, what we should have is none of the elements shared between any of these nested lists. That's the issue here. So what I could do is just 11, and I could do 11 here, or 21 rather. There we go. Okay, that's better. Alright, so what we're going to do is v equals eval. If you remember, we have to use the eval to convert the inputs into an integer instead, or floats, instead of being just a string. And then we'll do enter a number. We'll do if v in total, so we're selecting the first nested list, print v in list 1, elif v in total. This is quite similar to the d tuple that we were using before. Print v in list 2, and then we'll do elif v in total 2, print v in list 3. Okay, and we run this, well, like before, we're not going to do the else statement just yet. So let's say we do 0, we do 4. Then you have 4 in list 1, which it is. As you can see here, 4 is in list 1, or the first nested list. It were to do, let's say, 20. 20, of course, is in list 2. And if we were to do 28, it's in list 3. But what if we were to do some higher number like 40? What we do get in the output? And that's where the elif, or rather the else statement, comes in. Excuse me. We'll just make some space here actually. Else print not in any list. And now if we do 40, we get not in any list. Okay, great. So that concludes my lecture. I hope that's been insightful. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thanks. Welcome to control flow exercise. So in this exercise we have two tasks. The first one is control flow of dictionary, and what I want you to do is work with this code here. It looks quite intimidating, but don't worry so much. It's just a total of 4 lines of code that you have to fill in. So where it says add code here, or add code VV, so where it says add code VV, you simply add code just the line below it, so it would be on this line here. So you have add code here, 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 and here. And what you have is a total of, when you complete the code, 3 control flows. So one control flow, then a nested control flow, and then the inner control flow here, the most inner control flow. And what I want you to do is generate these 2 types of outputs. So desired output of, say you enter a number 3, found you, then you enter another number, 4, found another one, and then you enter an item, which is going to be a string, like say car. It says can't find a car. If on the other hand you put in say phone, it will say got a phone, which is here, got a phone, because of course in this nested list we have phone. And so in this dictionary D1 we've got K1 with a list and then a nested tuple, and then you've got K2 where you have a list and a nested list. And you also have a total of the inputs, 3 of them. So the first one is var, the second one is num, and then the third one is item. And the var and the num are checking for numbers. So in the list and the nested tuple, then in this list here, and the item inputs is checking for the string of a nested list, whether it's got phone, computer, or robots. Okay. And the hints are as follows. So number 1 is for the output control flow, or the outer control flow. So it's the very first one. Check if var is in K1. So you're going to check if K1 has, if var is in K1. And if it is, then you would have found you as an example. And then else, if var is in K13, which is the nested tuple. Nested tuple is this one here, 100, 300, and 500. And then you have to create an inner or nested control flow. That's pretty straightforward. And then number 4, you should have multiple outputs depending on your 2 inputs for both var and num, as well as item. Then number 5, add the in operator in 2 lines of code for the outer control flow. And lastly, number 6, use the eval method or function for one of the control flow statements. Okay. And then our second and final task is control flow with only one if statements. So what I want you to do is work with this code here, and you have 2 inputs. It's going to be asking for a number between 0 and 2, and then you have these 2 lists here that you're going to be working with, cooked pasta and sauce, and then you've got to print out my meal is something and very something. So say for instance it could be my meal is hot and very savory as an example. And as a desired output, let's say you enter 0 and 0, my meal is hot and very spicy. And so for instance, if you're looking at these 2 lists here, the 0 index would be hot and the 0 index here would be spicy. Hence you get my meal is hot and very spicy. And the hints are as follows. So number 1, use one if statement and an else statement. Number 2, use the eval built-in functional method, which should be quite obvious because you're going to be using indexing. And then number 4, use the none type object as the only output for the if statements. So the none, if I will just type this out, none outputs nothing. And if you have to do type none, it just says none type. Okay. And then lastly, number 5, use the following operators and, or, greater than, and less than for your if statements. Okay. Well, good luck with that. Hopefully you will be able to get both these tasks completed. If not, don't worry. I will be going over the solutions in the next video. Thanks. Welcome to Control Flow Solutions. So we have 2 tasks here. The first one is control flow with dictionary, which here we have as D1. And we've got 2 keys, K1 and K2. And we have the var, which is for the inputs. Okay, so all we have really is just 4 lines of code that we need to fill in. And if we just scroll down, I've taken the liberty to copy and paste this code into an empty cell, which you can see down below here. And we want these 2 desired outputs that we're going to be generating in a moment. Okay, so I'm going to be referring to the hints above. So number 1 is for the output control flow, check if var is in K1. So what we do is for the if statements, var in D1, K1, square brackets, and then 2, else if var in K1 free, so that's going to be for the elif. Okay, so what we do is var in D1, square brackets, K1, and then we do an index of free. And then number 3 is create an inner or nested control flow. What we have to do here for the first one is just do if, and make sure this is in alignment with the print and num here, so there's no indentation error. And then for the second one, it's going to be, of course, the else. Do else colon, and that should almost be it. And number 4 says you should have multiple outputs. That's fine. Number 5, add the in operator in 2 lines of code for the outer control flow. Well, we've already done that, so we've got 1 here and 2 here for the if and the else, the if and the elif. And then lastly, number 6, use the eval for one of the control flow statements. So it's not going to be for the var because we've already got an eval here, and that's for the outer control flow. And obviously we're not going to use the eval for the inner control flow because we're checking a string of, say, phone, computer, or robots within the nested list of K2. So it must be this one here. So we can actually do it here on the num equals inputs, but we'll do it here, eval. Okay, so that should be fine. And then we want for the first outputs is enter a number 3, found you, enter a number 4, found another one, enter an item, car, can't find a car. Okay, so 3, 4, and car. So give this a try, run the code, 3, 4, and car. Great, so we have 3, 4, and car. Found you, found another one, can't find a car. And for the second output that we wanted was enter a number 4, where are you? Which is straightforward, 4, where are you? Okay, great. And what we're going to do is just a few more to see if the code works in totality. So we do 3, found you, let's say we do 4, and then we'll do, let's say, robots, got a robots. Okay, great. And lastly, we'll do, let's say, 100, can't hide. Actually, we'll do one more. Say we do 3, and let's say we do 34, can't find anything. Okay, so all of our control flow is working perfectly. And we'll move on to the second task, and that is control flow with only one if statement. So like before, I've taken the liberty of copying and pasting this code into an empty cell, and we've got the desired output here of enter a number between 0 and 2, so put 0 and 0 here for both the inputs, and then my meal is very hot, it's hot and very spicy. So I've got these hints here, I'm going to be referring to them. So the first one is use only one if statement and an else statement. Okay, well, what we can do is just put the if and the else, and put some colons here. Okay, and then use the eval built-in function or method. So I think it would make sense to use the eval for here, and also for here as well, because it's asking us to enter a number, and we're also going to be doing indexing for these two lists, the cooked pasta and the sauce. So we'll do choose dish, and we'll do pick sauce. Okay, and then we have my meal is something and very something exclamation mark. Okay, and then for the outputs of the if statements, we're just going to have none. And then it says use the following operators, so and, or, greater than, or less than. So what we can do is say choose dish greater than 2 and pick source greater than 2. So it has to be between 0, 1, and 2. If it's greater than 2, then it will return none. And what we can do is place this inside of the else statements, otherwise we'll get an indentation error. So let's just give this a try. If we do, let's say 4, we don't get any output, it's just none. Okay, great. So I'm just carrying on with this. Or choose dish is less than 3 and pick source is greater than 2, and I'll just put a line here for a moment, or choose dish is greater than 3 and pick source, or actually greater than 2 this should be, and pick source is less than 3. Now if I run this, it's actually going to cause an error. It's indentation, well, syntax error. There we go. Okay, now this should work in totality. So what we want is the output of my meal is hot and very spicy, so 0 and 0. So give this a try. 0, 0. My meal is hot and very spicy. Great. Let's try a few more. Let's say 1 and 0. My meal is cold and very spicy. So for instance, if we do 1 here, we'll get cold, and if we do 0, we'll get spicy. Let's say we do something greater than 2, let's say 4 and 4, we get no output. And if we want to do, let's say, 2 and 2, my meal is overcooked and very savory. So we have here 2 on the index overcooked and 2 here as well for savory. Okay, great. So that concludes my lecture on the solutions to this exercise. I hope it's been insightful. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the Q&A. Thanks.